Now that I've got this front cross member dialed in with the angles on both sides, I'm moving on to the rear section. Now this line right here that I've drawn on the floor indicates the back of the cab. I had left these frame rails running a little bit long, a little wild back here. So I just transferred that angle onto my metal right here, and I cut that much of the frame off. Now, I did that on both sides because it is absolutely crucial to make sure that these frame rails are identical. So you can see right here, I cut the exact same amount off both, and they both have the same angle on them right here. So when I did that, I had to take the frame rails up and put them on my sawhorses and work on them up there. But now I've got everything laid back down here against my pattern. I've ensured that my mark right here that represents the firewall is in line with my pattern on the floor. And to make sure everything's square, I've taken a diagonal measurement from that corner to that corner, and from that corner to that corner. And they've got to be exactly the same. And it ended up being exactly 83 inches. So I've got 83 inches from there to there and from there to there. So now I'm ready to start building the kick-ups and the center cross member. Before I took the body off, I had went ahead and mocked this kick-up up in a piece of wood here. So you can see right here on the front, it will land on the front forward frame section right here, and that's where it will attach. Now, because this is a severe angle right here, and it'd be impossible to get in there to weld it. Before I put this center section in, I will weld right here. And then when I put the cross member in, it'll go in there just like that. And even though there's a little bit of an angle right here, I'm going to cut this front section off square. That will leave a little pocket for that bead right there. And then when I weld this up for the final time, I'll weld this inside corner here, and the top and bottom right there. That will make, this rear section's probably a fair bit of overkill, but it's going to be super solid. Now right here, this creates a pocket. There will be a plate that I make right here that will mount the quarter elliptic springs that goes to the rear end. And this center cross member, I'll just leave it solid until I get ready to build engine and transmission mounts, and I will end up cutting part of that center section out when I make the transmission mount, and I may end up putting something akin to a drive shaft loop or something there. But for now, I'll just keep it solid, and that will tie everything together good. So I'm going to get started building these cross members and this rear kick up right here. Now, as I'm putting these pieces together, you can see I've just taken my angle grinder, and I put a nice bevel on those edges for good weld penetration right there. I'll do this side and this side over here. Probably won't do this side because I don't care if the weld just piles up right there on the inside corner. Now that I've got that bevel ground in my parts, I've got it clamped to a nice straight piece of metal right here, so there's absolutely no chance of it twisting here or a chance of a misalignment right here. You can see right here it's perfectly aligned. I'm going to go ahead and tack that, and I'll be ready to fit it to the chassis, and it'll be ready for final welding. Again, I'm going to reiterate that everything from one side to the other has to be symmetrical. I've got these evened up right here on the sawhorses here, and I noticed I was getting ready to weld these joints up solid. So I was comparing one part against the other to make sure that they're identical. And this is all good, even to where it starts bending up right here. Starts the kick up. Once it gets up here to the top, you can see there's just a slight bit of difference right there. Maybe an 1/8 inch at the top, maybe a little more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these tacks right here at the top of this one and pull this piece back a little bit, and I may cut the bottoms on this one and pull it forward just a little bit so that they match. It's absolutely crucial that all these parts are identical from one side to the other. So I'm going to get those tacks cut, match those up, and then I'll be ready to weld them up solid. Now I'm welding these kick-ups up solid. You can see I got a nice weld right here, but what I've decided to do, because these parts will be visible from the outside of the car, I'm going to grind these down flush, and this frame I'll eventually end up painting, and I'll put just a little skim coat of body filler right there. Paint that, it'll look real nice. Now, if this was a part of the suspension where it was going to be load bearing, I would go to the inside if I wanted a nice smooth look and put a fish plate on the inside. I would drill a couple of holes, maybe a couple of small holes on either side, and I would do a rosette weld, and then you could grind those down flush too. That would add a lot of strength to the frame. But since this is not a load-bearing part, really all that this is going to support, it will be the bed and whatever I'm hauling in the bed, which won't be much because it's going to be a very small bed, but that's all the weight it'll have on it. So since it's not going to be a load-bearing part, I'm not going to put the fish plates in it. And, you know, if I did decide to change the suspension, if my design changes and I go to maybe parallel leaf springs or a buggy spring type configuration, I could go in here and I could put, you know, fish plates on the outside. You know, some people prefer the look of them on the outside. You know, they'll make a nice little design and weld it on maybe a diamond here, you know, or something like that. Some people put them on the outside, but I'm just going to grind these down flush, and it'll make a nice looking transition here, and it'll be a nice clean look. Now I've got all my pieces cut out in metal except for these pieces under the bed, which I'm not going to cut those out just yet because I'm not really sure how long they're going to be, and I won't know until I get the body mounted on the frame and kind of get some eyes on it and see what looks right. I'll determine the length of the bed, and then I can go back and weld those on later. I've got all these pieces cut out. I've got this one tacked together. That one, you can see right there. I've just got it cut out. There's my patterns over there that I used. So I'm ready to start tacking everything together and finalizing everything. Now that I've got this pattern, I just transferred that into metal right there, and you can see over on the corner I've test fitted it. It fits perfectly. So that's the advantage of using the wood to make a pattern with. So before I tack that in, I'm going to knock that out right here, and I'll show you. I've outlined this in Sharpie right here, and I'm going to go in and drill a hole right here, and I'll drill one on the other side. And what that's for is wiring. When I get to the point where that I wire the car, this frame rail is the perfect conduit in which to hide the wiring. So it'll travel up this frame rail. I'll have a wire that goes to this headlight and a turn signal on this side. The wiring that goes to the other side will go through this hole, through that cross member, and through that frame rail, and to the other light and turn signal. Similarly, on the back right here, I'll drill a hole here in this cross member, and the wire will travel through that frame rail and up and out the back for the tail lights. I've got everything mocked up here now, and I am really digging the proportions on this. Back here in the back, you can see the kick-ups. The only potential change that I see so far is these kick-ups may be a little too tall, too high here. I may end up dropping that down to a 10-inch kick-up right there. That's 12 inches in the back right there right now. And I may trim the fronts of them off just a little bit to close that gap up. You can see that's got a pretty good gap right there. So I think I'm going to trim the fronts of those off about a 1/4 inch, and that will allow them to slide up under the body there and close that gap up just a little bit. Other than that, everything looks really good. You can see the mid cross member right there. That's where it lands. And in the back, when I get this all put together, I'll have another cross member right here at the top of this kick up, and that'll help tie everything together and make it solid. Overall, I'm really happy with the mock-up so far. So I'm going to proceed with getting everything welded up solid. So I'm coming out here to the scrap pile out here behind the shop. And I've been hoarding up these springs from different projects. These are things that's left over from, I don't know, there's some in here from an old Chevy. I think these are from an old 46 model Chevy, I think. There's some in there from an F100. There's different things in here, but this is what I'm going to use, hopefully, for quarter elliptics. So what I'll do is I'll unpack these, and I'll get down to about, I don't know, maybe 3 springs right there, and I'll cut them off back here somewhere, and I'll have a quarter elliptic right there. So I'm going to get busy digging these out and kind of see which ones I want to use, and see if they're going to work out for me, or if I'm going to have to buy something.